הריני מקשר עצמי לכל הצדיקים האמיתים שדרבנו לכל הצדיקים האמיתים שוכני הקדוש ושבר עצמה ובחרנו הקדוש צדיק יסוד עולם נחמן וחוכמה רבנו נחמן תגן את שמחה נח נחמן נאומן זכותו תגן עלינו ועל כל ישראל אמן. Okay, continue Torah Yud Likutei Moharan lesson 10 on the theme of Purim. Okay, before we get started, I think we stopped off at section 4. That was at Od Daled, where we were just discussing also about the Inyan of Tefillah. That Yaakov's main idea is to bring the aspect of Tefillah from the mountain, then to the field, and then to the house. And the house is obviously the most perceivable by every individual, so that every person can obviously pray. You can do it Bodeduf, can pray according to their own needs where they find themselves. Because if you're not able to pray to Hashem Yitbarach at your level, then God is limited. You limit Hashem's koach. If you can't pray to Hashem over the small things, like Rabbeinu teaches Rabbi Natan over a small button, then God is big enough, but not big enough for the button. Meaning, you're not bringing God to your problem. And that's a chidush, that's a very big chidush with regard to Rabbeinu's Torah, and that tefillah has to be prayed over every single thing. Aside from the fact that tefillah is the most important, that tefillah is the dvekut to Hashem, that even the segulot Rabbeinu mentioned in Sefer Hamidot and all those things, like Rabbi Israel said, like Saba said, all the things in Sefer Hamidot need to be preceded by tefillah. For example, a small thing, that a small segula in Sefer Hamidot. Like Rabbeinu says, to find your zivug, read Korbanot Anesi, read the offerings of the tribes, right? Rabbi Israel said, you can do it like that, but Rabbeinu is not here to give you remedies, like to take a box, okay, here, do this remedy to give you this. Rabbeinu is here to repair the shoresh of your problem, the source of your problem. And how do you get to the source of your problem? By addressing it with the man who gave it to you in the first place. Or the fact that you think it's a problem, but really it's not. But how do you get there? You have to go to the source. And who's the source? God himself. That's why tefillah repairs absolute everything. That's why Rabbeinu wasn't for segulot. Sefer Hamidot isn't a book of segulot. It's a book that requires tefillah to be able to accomplish it. Or else you're just tapping into shortcuts and doing things the way Rabbeinu didn't want you to do it. Rabbeinu says, I'm going to make you guys many different groups. But the most precious group in Rabbeinu's eyes is the group of the B'tfilah, the master of prayer. And that is the highest madriga, because there's nothing more precious in Hashem's eyes than bringing tefillah to the lowest individual. That the lowest individual can pray just like the highest individual can pray. That means everybody has a place in God's heart. And that also means that what Rabbeinu says in section 3 or section 4 that we just discussed earlier, or even in section 2, that what? That the main thing for Hashem's kavod is that even the goyim come to recognize Hashem. But how do you do that? Through tefillah. Because Torah, it requires a level to enter the Torah. But tefillah, anybody can speak to God. And that was an etzah that Rabbeinu gave to one of his students, when one of his students came to him and asked him, what should I do if I want to draw close to Hashem? For a person who just started, what can I do? Rabbeinu gave him the advice, study Torah. The man responded back, what if I can't study? What if I don't know how to study? I don't know the language, I don't know how to study, I don't know how to open up a book. What did Rabbeinu respond? He didn't respond with a witty comment saying, okay, you can study, you just open up a different type of book, through that aside, he said, tefillah. Because through tefillah, you can attain lechol tuv, you can attain everything that is good, even Torah. Tefillah is like the emunah that stands at the lowest level, but it's the circle, it's also the highest madriga. It's above logic. And that's where all the sources, that's where all the problems are repaired in tefillah. So when we pray, that's what Rabbeinu was saying, that prayer has to be brought down to the bechina bayit, house, that anybody can tap into tefillah. And when everybody can tap into tefillah, that's the bechina of geulah. That's the bechina of redemption, which Rabbeinu was discussing here along the theme of Purim. Because obviously we're talking about clapping and dancing and lifting ourselves out of the galut, out of the exile, lifting ourselves out of judgments. Which is why it's so important to dance. Preceding Purim and on Purim, that the entire avodah of Purim is to lift your feet and to clap your hands. This is the entire avodah. It's the entire avodah. We're also shedding our physical body in doing so. Rabbeinu has a very beautiful inyan on this. That we don't choose our physical garment. Our soul was given to us. But the physical garment is just a manifestation. The physical body is just a manifestation of how the soul looks. The soul looks a certain way, and obviously it manifests itself and shapes itself like the way the physical body appears, the way I look, the way we all look. When we dance and clap, we annul this inyan and we enter the shorosh of the neshama. We go back to the tzura, the form, rather than the chomer, which is the corporeality, the physicality, the materialism. We're subduing all that inyan. And Rabbenu says the yikar of doing this is all within the Bechina of Tzilah, within the Bechina of dancing and clapping, and all the themes that Rabbenu mentioned in this Torah, which is Tefillah too. So, before we get to section 4, to do a few pieces in what do you call it? In Likutei Likutei Moharan on this inyan of dancing. I'll show you here. And by the way, we're going to get to this inyan of how dancing and clapping are knows avodah zarah. How avodah zarah is within the hand and within the feet specifically. Al tevoeni regel gava. Do not come to me, foot of pride. That the foot of pride should not come to me. By the way, this is one of the last phrases the Baal Shem Tov whispered before he passed away. A couple hours before he passed away, the Baal Shem Tov was repeating the phrase Al tevoeni regel gava. Do not come to me, the foot of pride. The Ari HaKadosh was also saying, save me from pride. That was the Ari HaKadosh's last words on his deathbed. Save me from pride, save me from pride. Avodah zarah is gava. Gava, arrogance, is avodah zarah. Why? How do you know? It says one who is mitgael, one who has gava, it's as if him and God don't live in the same world. Which means God completely removed himself from this person. This man has no connection to Hashem Yitbarach. It's kfira. You're denying God's existence through gava. Because you're saying, Ana emnoch, I want to rule, which we're going to get to today, section 4. When you lift your feet and dance, and why I'm going ahead is because I want to get to this stuff before Purim. When you lift your feet and dance, you remove the ruach of gava, and you bring the ruach of the tzaddik to the feet and to the hand. And when you do that, you're able to lift yourself out of that gava, which is the source of all the problems. Kfirot, atheism, all your tzarot, your dinin, all stem from a lack of emunah, avodah zarah, gava, arrogance, all those places. So dancing and clapping is the remedy for everything, Rabbeinu was saying. And if we do this on Purim, all the Yeshuot are accessible, all the salvations are there. So everything that is Purim is all surrounded around the subject, one thing: clap and dance. The drinking should bring you to an easier ability to clap and dance. Huh? You good? Should be clapping and dancing, everything. So, what does Rabbeinu say? The ikar of drinking is only to bring you to the expansion of the mind where you lift your feet and you clap your hands. And when you lift your feet and you clap your hands, you remove the ruach of el acher, the other God. Atheism, gava. Gava is the biggest form of avodah zarah. Arrogance is the biggest form of idol worship. So, what does Rabbeinu say? We know very beautiful piece in Tzichot Haran that one time Rabbeinu came to a person and he said like this: when you separate yourself from the tzadikim, it's as if you do idol worship. Which is, we're talking about in practical, in lesson 10, practically, is gava, arrogance. Which is why Rabbeinu says, we're about to see in this lesson, the biggest piece of advice to the person who falls into arrogance: attach yourself to the tzadikim. So look what Rabbeinu says. When you separate yourself from the tzadikim, it's as if you serve idols. Ki ita b'zohar kadosh, it's brought down Tikkun Zohar, Tikkun Chafalef, lesson Tikkun 21. She'atzadik hu kutza de'od daled. The tzaddik is the point of the letter daled. If you look at the letter daled, let me see if I have a letter daled to show you guys. No. You guys see a letter daled? No, letter daled. Cool. See this letter daled right here? The difference between the daled and the resh is that the resh is one curve. Look at the resh. You see how it's one curve? Whereas the daled is more square. It's more boxy. It has a line, a horizontal line, and a vertical line. But the vertical line still leaves room for the horizontal line to surpass the vertical one. So you see that point where the horizontal line is surpassing the vertical one? That's what we call the kotza daled, the point of the daled, meaning that corner right there.
It's the angle.
It's the angle, yeah, exactly. That point right there is where the horizontal line surpasses the vertical. But that's a tzaddik, the Zohar HaKadosh says. Why? Because this is the difference between echad and acher. Echad represents oneness. What's oneness? Emunah and Hashem. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem echad. Why do we extend the Dalet? To prove the fact that Hashem is within all four corners of the world. Dalet representing the numerical value of 4. But aside from that, the Dalet represents echad, oneness. Whereas if you take out that point, the kota de Dalet, what are you left with? A resh. And what did it become? Echad becomes acher. Kel acher. Which means other gods. What did it say? Velo ye kel acher. What did it say? Anochi lo ye acherim Elokim acherim al panai. Do not have other gods upon me, preceding me. Chad v'shalom. Elokim acherim meaning acher representing the other side, the opposite side, the evil side. That only happens when you separate the kota de Dalet, the point of the letter Dalet, which is the tzaddik. So Rabbeinu says, the tzaddik represents the point of the letter Dalet. When you separate yourself from the tzaddik, you separate that point of the letter Dalet from the word echad, and it becomes acher. Which represents other gods, atheism, avodah zarah, idol worship. Because the true faith in God's unity, in His oneness, which is the biggest mitzvah, to believe in Hashem's oneness, is all done through what? The tzadikim. You want to attain that emunah? Tzadikim. The true tzadikim, which represent the point of the letter Dalet of Echad, as we mentioned above. And this is brought down in many places in the Rabbeinu's work, Sefer Hamidot and Rabbeinu's Torah, that the truest emunah, the essence of emunah, is brought down by drawing close to the true tzaddikim. And you cannot attain emunah unless you draw close to the true tzaddikim, especially when you get closer to the tzaddik Emet, the true tzaddik, the tzaddik Yesod Olam, that he's able to bring you to the highest emunah. Which is why Rabbeinu says it's not sufficient to just search for any tzaddik. You have to search for the tzaddik Emet, the truest tzaddik, the highest tzaddik. Why? Because the parable is that what? We're searching for the biggest doctor. And the more you recognize how sick you are, the more you recognize how much help you need, the more you need the biggest doctor. A person who needs brain surgery tomorrow, whose life is in danger, he's not going to go to a protege or someone who's learning the first time to do brain surgery, or a foot surgeon, God forbid. You're going to go to the best brain surgeon there is, and they're going to pay all the money that there is. And the tzaddik is willing to sacrifice everything to give you all the remedies, just so that one drop fixes. Like Rabbeinu says, the parable of the prince. There was once a prince of the king who was so sick, he had no remedy to be able to save him. The king brought every single doctor for his son. They all told him, your son is beyond healing. But the biggest doctor that there was came to him and said, look, the only remedy that exists is for you to take all your jewels in the entire treasury. Take all your jewels, crush them till it becomes a fine liquid, a powder, and pour all of that on your son's mouth. The problem was the son couldn't open up his mouth. But he needed a remedy to enter. And because he couldn't open up his mouth, nothing would go in. So this doctor told him, you're going to need to waste everything. Not waste. Chad v'shalom, not going to waste it all. You're going to need to take all your jewels, meaning everything hidden in the king's treasury, all your stones, crush them up to a very, very fine thing, pour it all over your son so that one drop enters in. And if one drop enters, then you'll be saved. Rabbeinu says the same is true of the etzot of the tzaddik Emet. The advice of the true tzaddik is the same way. Rabbeinu and all the true tzaddikim, especially the tzaddik Emet, is going to bring you thousands upon thousands upon thousands of etzot, just so that one enters. Because if just one enters, then you can become a tzaddik. You're completely healed. But the problem is we're not letting that one piece enter. So we have to open up our mouth. We have to drink in the Torah of Rabbeinu and the Torah of the Tzadikim Amitim so that just one drop goes in. Because if one drop goes in, then the entire refuah is there. Everything. So.
Just quickly, you said, how do you say dot again? You said kotz?
Kotza, yeah.
How do you say thorn in Hebrew? Is it the same thing?
Yes, actually.
So I think there was a Rafael Pinto who like made a comparison between Haman and like be compared to like thorns, and he said like he represents this holy now of Gava, because Haman was like full of Gava, he wanted everyone to bow down to him. So he said like that cuts is like what we're trying to fix as well. Changing Achel to Echad, and that cuts is a dot, like like you're saying. So he made that whole comparison.
That's very nice.
That was pretty cool, yeah.
That's awesome. So, it's amazing actually. So where do we go? We go to the Sinyan. Honestly, start section 4. Who wants to read? Start section 4. Anyone want to volunteer? What's the deal? Yeah, vas-y. Let's go.
בעניין זה לעלות התפילה בבחינת הר ושדה לבחינת בית ברינת עיר אלוקינו כדי שיתגלה מלכותו גם לעקום שיהיה להם גם כן השגה באלוקותו יתברך שמו.
Continue?
Ouais. אי אפשר לעשות כי אם על ידי צדיקי הדור כמו שאמרו חכמינו זיכרונם לברכה.
Continue.
מי שיש לו חולה בתור ביתו ילך אצל הרחם ויבקש עליו רחמים כי עיקר התפילה אינם יודעים כי אם צדיקי הדור כי יש בעלי גאווה.
Okay. Inyan zeh, this idea that we mentioned in the previous section, which was what? To bring tefillah to the aspect of the house, to denigrate it, but making it accessible to every individual, is only possible, meaning to bring tefillah, to elevate tefillah from Har v'Sadeh to the Bechinat Bayit. We think it's a deal. We think it's to lowering it. Why? Because you're going from the mountain to the field to the house, which is the lowest place. No, Rabban was saying you're elevating it. Because the higher something is, the lower it can go. So look at the word of Rabban who says, Leha'alot tefillah. You're elevating tefillah from the ha to the bait. You'd think it's the exact opposite. You're actually lowering tefillah. You're decreasing tefillah. No, the bigger the honor for Hashem, the bigger the elevation of God's name, is whenever He resides with the lowest people. And that's the idea that we have to ingrain in our heads, that we've been mistaken in our entire lives. This idea that what? That we think Hashem is only with the people that are close. It's actually the exact opposite. The people who are far is exactly where Hashem is. So Rabbeinu says to elevate tefillah from the Har and Sadeh to Bechinat Bayit, Bechinat Ir Elokenu, which is the city of our God, as we mentioned above. The city is a place where people inhabit the city. Of course, they live there. People are comfortable in the city. And that's where the tefillah needs to be brought to. So that we can reveal God's kingship also to the Goyim. Like we said earlier. So that they too should also have that they too should also have a perception of Hashem's godliness. Blessed be He. Rabbeinu says the only way to do this, to bring a perception of God to the furthest people, and to bring tefillah to the furthest people, the only way to do this is through the tzadikim shebador. Only through the tzadikim of the generation. As the Chachamim say in the Gemara Baba Batra, anyone who has a sick person in his home, should go to the wise man and seek from him mercy. Meaning, when you need someone to pray for you, where do you need to go to? The tzaddik ha'emet. You need to go to the tzaddik and to ask the tzaddik or the tzaddikim shebedorenu. But specifically, the greater the tzaddik, the bigger the tefillah. Especially the tzaddik ha'emet, for he is the tefillah of the generation. And when you go to him, he will be able to attain rachamim for you. He'll be able to seek out mercy for you on your behalf from Hashem Yitbarach. And that's the koach of the tzaddik ha'emet. So Rabbeinu said, tefillah is only possible to attain if you go to the tzaddik first. Because what's the problem if you don't go to the tzaddik first? You're going to have gava to think that your tefillah has koach. And the gava to think that your tefillah is going to get answered because it's your tefillah is going to actually prevent your tefillah from getting answered.
What if you pray without that idea? Then you might feel it's going to answer. You just think from Hashem, Rachamim is going to answer.
So, al-yedei matanat chinam?
Yeah.
So that's the inyan of using the tzaddik's koach. Because where do we understand this concept from? from Rabbenu's Koach, from Rabbenu's Torah lesson 20, where he says that you should never pray using your own schut. You should always pray relying on God's mercy, that Hashem is going to give you a free gift. The biggest secret of tefillah is never thinking that you're worthy of anything you're asking. Never. Because we're not.
Already there, man.
Huh?
I'm already there, gotcha.
Never think that you're ever worthy of attaining tefillah. By the way, Rabbi Nathan says, never think that it's because of your tefillah that you are answered. If, for example, you pray for something, for example, you pray for zivul, or you pray for a parnasa, and Hashem sends you something in that area, a salvation. Never think that it's in the merit of your tefillah that you got answered. Rabbi Nathan says this chidush. Now, what's the motivation to pray then if you don't think nothing you're doing is getting answered? Rabbi Nathan saying, don't think for 1 second that it's your zechut of your tefillah. Yes, your prayer is what brought down the Yeshua, but it's not because your prayer was great or this or that. It's because what? Hashem has rachamim.
Sure.
Rabbanu says, if God knows everything, why do you need to pray? If Hashem knows everything, or for example, Rabbanu has another Torah. If Hashem knows you need parnasa, why do you need to ask for parnasa? Why do we need to go on a parnasa? Why doesn't Hashem give you parnasa techef immediately?
Because we'll merit it?
So, Rabbanu has meant, that's for sure. That's for sure. But on the inyan of tefillah, Rabbanu brings the idea. We need a kli to accept the shefa that God wants to give us. And what's the kli? The peh, the mouth. So you need to bring the request within your mouth to pray to God so that now you have the kli to accept the shefa Hashem wants to send you. The mouth is just a vessel to bring it down. But don't think for 1 second and be misconstrued to think for the fact that your tefillah was the thing that brought your salvation. A lot of people say, oh, I prayed for this and I got my thing. No, because you're having a gava to think that your tefillah has so much koach to bring down a Yeshua. Rabbanu says, no, don't be misconstrued to think that. You have to think that what? That it's Hashem's rachamim granting it to you. Of course, your tefillah is what allows that Yeshua to come down. But it's not because your tefillah was so beautiful or this or that. Don't get gava to think that your tefillah had the merit to bring down such a Yeshua. Hashem is giving it to you as a gift. Now, yes, Hashem wants you to pray because your prayer is what connects you to Hashem Barach. It's what allows them to say, oh, okay, I want to accept Him now the time. But not to be ever falling into the gava to think that your tefillah is so valuable. Now, yes, tefillah is valuable in Hashem's eyes, but to think that your tefillah has the koach to accomplish certain things, this is something else. Meaning, yes, tefillah has the koach to bring things down, but make it not fall into gava. That it's in the merit of your tefillah that you attain this. No. There's tzadikim praying for you, there's this, that. Always be humbled by the fact of tefillah. But tefillah is everything for Hashem. So Rabbeinu says like this. Go to the chacham and vivakesh alav rachamim. Go request from him mercy. Seek out mercy from the chacham. Ki ikar tefillah enam yodim ki im tzadik yador. Because the true essence of tefillah, the vitality and the true body of tefillah, only the tzadikim shebador know.
That's why having the Kesha is so important.
Yeah. Why it's such a big nusach, Rabbeinu said in Sichot Haran, to say before any single tefillah, shacharit mincha arvit hitbodedut, hareni mekasher atzmi lechol tzadikim ha'amitim shebetokenu. The same nusach that we say before tikkun haklali or anything, we do this nusach before any tefillah. Why? Because the tzadik is not going to pray for you. And what did it say in the Gemara? When you have a chole betor betor, meaning anyone who's chole nefesh, anyone who's suffering from any tzar, any pain, go to the chacham and request from rachamim. Meaning what? Attach your tefillah to the tzaddik shebador because only he knows how to elevate your tefillah to the proper place. That's what Rabbi Nathan is saying. Don't be misconstrued to think the fact that what? That your tefillah had the koach to elevate itself to the proper place to draw down the Yeshua. No. If not for Rabbeinu, Moshe Rabbeinu, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, Ari HaKadosh, the Baal Shem Tov, and all the tzaddikim amitim who are praying your prayer, the Avot HaKadoshim, Yosef HaTzadik, Rachel Imenu, your tefillah wouldn't go anywhere. It would stay in the room. It would go below the ground. It would go to the ocean. I don't even know what to say. Our tefillot don't have koach unless we attach them to the tzaddikim shebador. The tzaddik shebador, especially, because only the tzaddik shebador is capable of elevating tefillah to the right place in the Mishkan, to build the Mishkan again, and to draw down the Yeshua that you need. So Rabbeinu says, don't ever fall into the gava of what? Of preventing the tefillah of tzadikim. And now Rabban is going to get into a very, very sensitive subject, but very beautiful subject, about how there's plenty of people that prevent others from going to pray by the Kivrei Tzadikim. And how big of an avera it is. Why? Because Rabbeinu says, you are preventing the ta'ava of Hashem Yitbarach from being filled. Can you imagine? The desire of Hashem from being filled.
Like, what's that about?
What does it say? Hashem mit'avel tefillat Hashem tzadikim. Hashem desires the tefillat of tzadikim. The ta'ava of Hashem is to hear the tefillah of the tzaddik. And when you don't go to the tzaddik, and you hear other people saying, you don't need to go kivrei tzadikim, just pray here, stay in the bet midrash, bitul Torah. The problem is you're preventing Hashem's desire from being filled. You're preventing Hashem's simcha from being filled, which is what? Where does that come from? The problem is those people have so much arrogance that they don't think you need the tzaddikim to pray. So they say pray in the bet midrash. Why? Because it's bitul zman, bitul Torah. You don't need to go there.
In our Ashkenaz post-game, I won't even let you daven at the grave.
What about?
There's plenty of people that say that because they didn't want to follow Chad v'Shalom b'chinam avodat
I
Zarah.
heard I heard Surah Shishit Vort. I didn't, there was no title. I didn't know what the vote was going to be about. I was off for an hour and a half and why you should not go to any Kivaran to daven. I'm like,
Wow. Chad v'Shalom.
I just want to get like your thought on this. What about like the tefillah goes unheard? So
For sure it doesn't.
someone's tefillah doesn't. Let's say it's some random person. Imagine simple Jew who's never introduced to like Chassidut or anything, doesn't know anything about it, just prays to Hashem. I feel like that's a tefillah that's so...
Of course. Not to say that the tefillah isn't being assisted by the tzaddikim without them knowing or not, because anybody's tefillah is being assisted by the tzaddikim. The tzaddikim are constantly elevating tefillah. That's their job. Moshe Rabbeinu's job is to elevate the Mishkan. What's the Mishkan? It's tefillah. But what's the inyan? By the way, just to get the idea down, when Rabbi Natan says that don't fall into the misconception to think that it's in the merit of your tefillah that you attain your salvation, he's saying that to say that you don't fall into the gava, Chad v'Shalom, to think that you have worthiness, that you are meritorious, that your tefillah is worth something that it can bring down such a salvation. But tefillot are heard. Hashem is listening to everything. Shomea tefillat kol peh. Meaning tefillah brings down salvations, but don't be falling under the false notion that you are.
you're saying the result's true. It's going to bring down, but don't think it's because of your koach.
Yes, exactly. It's a koach of tzadikim. But tefillah, every single tefillah, from the lowest Jew, a person who is in kofer and everything, to the highest Jew, everything is heard. Now, what becomes a problem? That's a different subject. That one who doesn't study Torah, tefillah toeva. One who doesn't study Torah, his tefillah is an abomination. That's an entirely different subject. But when you pray to Hashem Yitbarach to attain the Torah, there's nothing higher than that. Because a person might not be at the level to study Torah, but if he goes to Hashem and he says, Hashem Yitbarach, I yearn to study Torah Hashem Shemai. I don't even know how to read Aleph Bet, but I yearn to do this. There's nothing more precious than Hashem. We see the story of the Baal Shem Tov 1,000 times. Baal Shem Tov went to learn tefillah from a person under a tree. The Eliyahu Navi told him, you want to know the story of tefillah? I want you to travel very, very far because there's a man who knows how to pray better than you. Baal Shem Tov said, what? Pray better than me? Okay, show me. The Baal Shem Tov went on a hideout to literally find a man who prayed better than him. Eliyahu Navi told him, he's over there. So, where did he go? He found a man. Who is the man? He started asking around the town, do you know where this man is? So and so. He said, why are you, Bichvodo Be'atzmo the Baal Shem Tov, looking for that man? What are you going to get from him? Said, no. Show me where he is. Who is this man? He said, he's in the field over there. He works in the field. Where did the Baal Shem Tov find him? Find him under a tree, saying, Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, He, Ba. And doing the Aleph Bet, Aleph Kutav, back and forth. So, he comes to the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov comes to this man. Says, what are you doing? Why are you saying the Aleph Bet back and forth? The man responds to the Baal Shem Tov. He says, look, I don't know how to read. All I was taught was the Aleph Bet. Aleph Bet, all I know is to pronounce it. So I don't know how to properly pray because I don't know how to organize my tefillah. I don't know how to pray from a siddur. I don't know anything. So what I do is I tell Hashem, you know my problems. I'm going to give you the alphabet, and I keep repeating it. And you create the combination of letters to bring down the Yeshua I need. You create the combination of letters that use the words that I need to attain the salvation. Hashem heard this, he said, now I need to pray b'pshitut, go back to the basics. Everything is about bringing things down back to the basic. What is Rabbeinu saying in this Torah? Bring tefillah from the ha and the sadeh to the mouth. Bring it to the lowest place. Because that which is in the lowest place is the highest in Hashem's eyes. The tefillah of the poor person is nothing higher in Hashem's eyes. Hashem says, I dwell with the daka and the shvar ruach, the lowly spirited person. The person who feels as if he's nothing, in his very low in his own eyes, Hashem listens to this man's tefillah. He really does. And of course, at tzadikim amitim, the greater they are, the more low they realize themselves. They are. Moshe Rabbeinu's humility was so big, even though he was the biggest person. How does that make sense? He's speaking to God every single day. He's literally panim et panim, face to face with Hashem. He receives the Torah. He eats. He goes up 40 days and 40 nights. Doesn't eat or drink. You're telling me the man is not an angel? He's above the angels. He literally went above the angels, and yet he's the most humble. How does that make sense? How is Yoshua not more humble than Moshe? Yoshua mitbatel himself. He nullified himself before Moshe Rabbeinu. Rabbeinu writes a secret in Moharan. The anava that Yoshua felt before Moshe Rabbeinu was still lower than the anava that Moshe felt before Hashem, vis-a-vis Hashem Yitbarach. Moshe Rabbeinu pictured himself so low before Hashem Yitbarach that lowliness vis-a-vis Hashem was still lower than the anava Yoshua felt before Moshe Rabbeinu. Which is why Rabbeinu says that my anava precedes all the tzadikim, the mefursamim. What does Rabbeinu say in Moharan? A dibur that don't repeat it outside this room. Ani anav me'od mikol ha'mefursamim. He said, I am the most humble from all the famous tzadikim. So, Rabbi Nachman Micharin writes in the author, like the what do you call it? The brackets, like as an editor's note, because Rabbi Nachman wrote Chayei Moharan, but Rabbi Nachman Micharin compiled it and he printed it after, and all the stuff, and he wrote pieces of Rabbi Nachman and all that stuff after. He edited some things. In the editor's note, Rabbi Nachman Micharin, he writes, what I think Rabbeinu is saying here is that vis-a-vis Hashem Yitbarach, he still was at a lower level than the lowliness Yoshua felt before Moshe Rabbeinu. And Rabbeinu, his anava before Hashem Yitbarach was so low that even all the other tzadikim received their anava from Rabbeinu himself.
Wasn't there a whole story where I think walked in on or listened to it, like, yeah. That's the craziest thing in the world.
Say what it means.
No, you said
say what it means.
I forgot what it was the story.
Zakeni להיות יהודי.
Yes.
How do you merit to be a Jew? Rabbi Natan found Rabbeinu saying this in his Hitbodedut. Zakeni להיות יהודי. Help me merit to be a Jew. It makes us realize, first off, the nekudat tova that we have to be a Jew. That we get to put on a kippah every single morning, to put on tzitzit, to have a world to come, to do mitzvot and maasim tovim, to even just say a dibur. We don't realize, by the way, we don't realize the chesed that Hashem sent us. The fact that we have a tzaddik like Rabbeinu in the world today. The remedies he gives us, the fact that we can rely on a tzaddik to lift us out of the darkest place. You know, I was talking to a friend of mine today who was going through a tough time. And we're discussing the idea of the tzaddik. And how Rabbi Nathan always says, Likutei and Rabbeinu always says, that the main thing is to search for the true tzaddik. Now, what does that mean for someone who found Rabbeinu? Serious question. What does that mean for someone who found Rabbeinu? Does the searching stop? Because you found the true tzaddik, right? The problem is who is Rabbeinu? Did you get to the kavanah of Rabbeinu? Did you really search for the emet lamito of Rabbeinu? The truest truth of Rabbeinu. And what is that? How Rabbeinu speaks to you, but within your darkness, within your galut. That's the uniqueness of the tzaddik emet. We say that tefillah is only great when it's at the bechinah bayit, right? So that any person can pray. But the tzaddik is the same thing. Rabbeinu said before he passed away, מה לכם לדאוג מאחר שאני הולך לפניכם? Why are you guys worried? I'm going before you. But what did Rabbeinu say? אני רוצה להישאר ביניכם. I want to dwell amongst you. Meaning what? Rabbeinu's entire koach is the fact that he resided in each and every single one of his students, any Jew, but specifically in the problems that each and every Jew is feeling that are personal to him. Where's your Rabbeinu? Where's your Rabbeinu? Where's your Rabbeinu? There's so many secrets to this Sina. To search for the true tzaddik means to find out Rabbeinu is particular to you where you are. It's particular to me within my problems, within my ta'avot, within my galut. Because Rabbeinu is saying, I'm going to dirty myself. I'm going to dirty myself. I'm going to be mitame myself. Like David HaMelech said in the Gemara Brachot. What did he say? He says, I purify myself bedamu vashilya, with blood and with placenta, letaher isha lebala, to purify a woman to her husband. What does that mean? David HaMelech, the tzaddik of the generation, his entire koach is to make himself dirty with blood and with a shilya. Meaning David HaMelech sacrificed the temple, to make his hands bloody, to not build a temple, so that what? To bring another person back to tshuva. Letaher isha lebara. What's the wife to the husband? The neshama of the Jew, which is the malchut, the kingship, the shechina, to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to create the union between Hashem and the Jewish people. The tzaddik ha'emet, Rabbeinu says, I'm willing to dirty myself to do teshuvah on your behalf. Meaning, what do you have to do when you do teshuvah? What is one of the halachot of teshuvah? You have to go to the place that you committed the sin in and refrain yourself from that sin. Meaning, true teshuvah is when you enter the place which you once had fallen in, but you refrain and you step back. And what does Rabbeinu say? To do teshuvah, ha-tzadik mukhrach la'asot teshuvah be'ad b'nei Yisrael. Torah Likutei Moharan, meforash. The tzaddik is forced to do teshuvah on behalf of the Jewish people. Which means what? He has to go to your sin, to enter that sin, and to go to that filthy place. And Rabbeinu says, I'm willing to do it. I don't care about my own, my bag, I don't care about my gun, and then I don't care about all the kavod they want to give me, I don't care. I'm willing to go to your place. The problem is, we don't believe Rabbeinu can go to that place. And that's the sort of Purim, sort of Chanukah, to bring Hashem Yitbarach, the Shekhinah, which is the light of the Tzadikim, within the Klippah. Why we have to dance and to clap? Why dancing? To lift our feet out of the mavet, the death. As we say, Ragleha yordot mavet. Her feet descend down to the death, to mavet, to mita. The feet malchut, the neshamot of Am Yisrael are in the klipa, they're in galut, they're in the dust. What's the entire job? To elevate the shechina from the dust. What is that? To elevate the Jewish soul, the wife to her husband. But how do you do that? When you lift your feet, when you dance.
Where does it say that our neshamot are?
Oh, the entire Zohar Kadosh, Knesset Israel represents the neshamot of Am Yisrael. The entire Zohar Kadosh, all Likutei Moharan, all Chassidut is all this inyan. That the Shekhinah is a collection of all the souls of the Jewish people. How do you elevate the Shekhinah? Elevating the neshamot of Am Yisrael. That's nothing bigger than doing teshuvah. Bigger than the Mashiach. People speak about Mashiach. Very important. Bigger than Mashiach is doing teshuvah. 100%. Uva le'tzion goel ul'shaveh pesha. The Goel, the Redeemer, will come to Tzion, Yerushalayim, ul'shaveh pesha, when we return from our sins. What does Rabbeinu say in Chayei Moharan? I've attained the hasaga where I can drop everything. I've attained the perception where I can drop everything and bring the Mashiach if I so want to, if I want to focus on it. But I decide not to. Because bigger than bringing the Mashiach, says it like this, bigger than bringing the Mashiach is one who makes the guilty righteous. One who holds the hand of the Reshayim. As it says in the Zohar HaKadosh, Zakai, worthy is the one among the, I forget what is it, one who holds the hand of the Reshayim. Rashaya or whatever, I forget the language. One who holds the hand of the Reshayim. That's what it means to purify a woman to her husband. David HaMelech's entire goal, the Bechinat Mashiach, is to purify the woman, the soul, the Jewish person, to her husband. And that's on Purim. How do we do it? Through dancing, through clapping, through getting drunk. Not to. Getting drunk, לפי ההלכות בשולחן ערוך, when they came to Rabbi Israel and they asked Rabbi Israel, what does it mean to get drunk on Purim? He said, Bipshitut, why are you asking me questions? He said, Bipshitut, the way it says in Shulchan Aruch, get drunk in the Gemara, ad de lo yada. Okay, Bipshitut. After that though, you get drunk to get hammered and to chad v'shalom throw up. This is a very big blemish.
It's only with wine, right? I saw that yesterday.
The main tikkun is
The
wine.
mitzvah it was the wine.
Is wine.
Yeah, his dad says wine, no?
Yeah, it's very. All the chashivut is in wine. Rabbeinu in Torah 29 of Likutei Moharan explains the sod of wine, how it has to do with tikkun abrit, tikkun aklali. This is how you subdue Amalek.
Red wine or
Red wine is the best thing to do.
Whatever you want, bro.
Because
Grape
you turn,
juice.
because Purim is the only day of the year where wine has no grasp by the klipa, by the evil forces. It's the only day of the year. July is the only day of the year for a breast lover that's allowed to get drunk. Any person is allowed to get drunk. Rabbeinu was very against farbrengens. Very against farbrengens. Why? Because the entire inyan of getting drunk to study Torah is not the inyan. Rabbeinu wants you to study Torah on a certain occasion, on Shabbat Kodesh, on Yamim Tovim, when the wine has more kedusha and it's elevated, you take a little bit to expand the mind. Drink a little bit of alcohol to expand the
I
mind.
read about that in the Gemara, how the Moharan would sometimes have a bit of wine before they learn. Like a bit, not like a lot.
Exactly.
Like to, they said it was to expand their mind.
Exactly. Yeshua Dat, Chabat Adat, to expand the mind. But the second it goes beyond that to the point of drunkenness, Rabbeinu says you forget the entire Torah and you forget Moshe Rabbeinu that exists within each and every one of your limbs. You forget the Torah within each and every one of your limbs. You know there's 248 mitzvot? 248 limbs. You forget the mitzvah that alludes to every one of your limbs. When you fall into shichut, drunkenness, God forbid. Purim is the only day of the year where that's allowed.
I have a question about Adel Yada, because like it's a very subjective measurement, you know? Like, when you don't know, when you can't tell what I'm like that in, like there's also the idea, like you just said, like you don't want to slip into something more. Like Adel Yada, like for a lot of people is that point where you're gonna, you know, like Adel Yada when you really don't know, mom is just where you're gonna throw up.
Yeah.
That's what I get confused with.
I think it just says
It's like, so what does it mean? Like just when you're confused about it?
yeah, the phrase.
Yeah.
The phrase Baruch Mordechai and Abraham. Just switch those up and keep repeating it.
There's a segula I
You don't
heard,
remember the phrase, bro?
which is good to fulfill the statement like Baal. There's a good thing to do. Rabbi said shitut because everybody knows their limits.
Yeah.
There's a limit where you're gonna drink and get dazed and get off your rocker, but then there's past that where it becomes to the point where you're not feeling well.
That's fair.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Don't get to the point of not feeling well. Because the entire inyan of Purim is to bring you to that lack of knowledge, which is the highest knowledge that exists, Tachlit HaYediah Shalom Neda, which is Keter, Purim, Resha De'la Teda, the head which is not known. This is the whiteness, this is the whiteness of Atik, the whiteness of Mordechai, the whiteness of Chesed of Hashem Yitbarach, that God is willing to forgive anything. You're able to attain a higher level in Purim and Yom Kippur. How? Through the drunkenness. But to the Madriga where it's enough to get you confused, but to the point where you don't care what other people think and you're gonna dance all day. By the way, I'm gonna say it 1,000 times, the entire Ika of Purim, I heard this in 1,000 classes, Rav Yifcha, Natan Uzon, these Breslover Hasidim, they all say, this entire Inyan, everybody's repeating it right now. It's funny because every time I get into a class, it's all I hear. Entire Inyan of Purim is to get drunk only for the sake of dancing all day. Rabbi Yitzchak, son of Rabbi Natan, came to Rabbi Natan. And Alim Kufa, Rabbi Natan writes this. Came to Rabbi Natan and asked Rabbi Natan, what do? I miss on Purim the ability to dance. Meaning that he knew the entire inyan of Purim was dancing. He felt that he did not dance enough on Purim. You know what Rabbi Natan told him? Purim's not over. You don't think Shushan Purim still has the light of Purim? Dance on Shushan Purim. Now, us, the people who don't live in a city wall that existed since the time of Yehoshua, we don't celebrate Shushan Purim by getting drunk and stuff. There's still a Tushav Purim. So there's never a missed opportunity. But when I tell you that the entire Inyan, when Rabbeinu says the entire Inyan, to subdue, erase Amalek, meaning erase Amalek. Erase the doubts in your head. Erase the klipot in your head. Erase the lack of clarity. Erase all the problems, the tzarot, the dinim, the judgment on you, on the Jewish people as a whole, on you personally, the galut that you're in, the exile that you're in. To erase all of that and to attain Yeshua is done through one thing, and it's clapping and dancing on Purim. And I will tell you one thing, the Yetzer Hara is going to work his butt off to make sure we do not do it. We do not dance. But when I tell you the main thing is to dance on Purim, Rabbeinu says the main thing is to dance on Purim. Lose your legs for all you care. Don't fear your legs, not be able to walk after.
Amen.
Bezrat Hashem, that we get to the Madriga where we literally cannot feel our legs the next day. Because when I tell you that all the Yeshuot are hidden within the dancing, Inyan Parnasa, Zivug, Simcha, Emuna, Tfila, Avodat Hashem, everything is within dancing. Everything is within the Rikudim and Amchat Kaf et Kaf. Especially when we understand that the dancing, which is the higher Madriga, is to lift out the feet, which are the Neshamot of Israel that are stuck in Galut. That literally means you yourself. That's what means you yourself, to get out of Galut. And by the way, Rabbeinu goes further than that. I'm gonna look what he says here, because I really wanted to focus on the inyan of dancing. We said earlier that the ga'ava is within the feet and the hands. The ga'ava is within the feet and the hands.
The gava is in the feet.
In the feet and in the hands, the ga'ava. Ga'ava exists.
Why?
So Rabbeinu says.
It's not in the mind. No.
So Rabbeinu says, he explains how the feet represent ga'ava. As it says in the pasuk in Tehillim, Al tevo eni regel ga'ava. Do not come to me, the foot of pride. Meaning the feet have ga'ava. To know the feet of ga'ava, how do you do it? Dancing. But the only way to dance, Rabbeinu says, is when you attach yourself to the true tzadikim, especially the tzadikai, man. Because he can give you true simcha to truly lift your feet.
What does it mean? I remember Uzan said this in the show, it said, Im tashib mishabat raglecha. How does that connect to this?
Im tashib mishabat raglecha. It has to do with dancing too, funny enough.
Yeah, I know, because he made a whole connection between that phrase and dancing and clapping on Shabbat, because I know there's an halacha that says you're not allowed to like clap and make noise, but he says that it was an inyan of tefillah even before that halacha. So it's like people used to do it and then he connected it to that, but I wonder.
There's a kula at Tosfot that explains that you can clap in tefillah, that you can clap on Shabbat. That they're making. And by the way, the Bras Hasidim have been doing this since Rabbeinu, which means that there's been, what do you call it? There's been Misorah already, and like.
No, for sure, but it says
The
that
clap.
even in the phrase, Im tashib, I've actually.
Im tashib mishabat raglecha. If you will refrain, im tashib mishabat raglecha.
It says yad after, I don't know the pasuk, so.
לעשות חפצה חדור קודשי וקראת.
Does not say yad.
אם תשמי שבת רגליך.
Yeah.
Noise on Shabbat during Tefillah or
In general.
in general?
It's like you see the
Oh, yeah.
Because
Ah, but-
you make a time or
like
je marque le
an
temps.
instrument, like an instrument.
Ah yeah, okay.
It's like also banging on tables a little sus, but
Yeah, that, yeah.
I do it.
אם תשמי שבת רגליך, I think has to do with returning the feet on Shabbat. What does that mean? Rabbeinu has a Torah in Likutei Moharan, where the feet, which are the feet of the mitzvah that you perform during the week, has a problem being elevated throughout the week, 6 days of the week. But on Shabbat, im tashim mi Shabbat raglecha, all the feet of all the mitzvot that you perform are lifted up on Shabbat. Which is why I'm sure he says, when you dance on Shabbat Kodesh, the lifting up of the feet while you're dancing is able to lift up the feet of the mitzvot that have the problem elevating itself during the week.
Oh, got it. Okay, that's what it is.
Or something along those lines, I'm sure. But Rabbeinu has a Torah im tashim mi Shabbat raglecha, and the idea of the mitzvot having a problem to elevate itself. How simcha also elevates the mitzvot. But we really understand this inyan. That mita is galut. Death is galut. All the tavot we have problems there. But when we dance and we lift our feet, it's not only forget, we erase Amalek. Erase it. Like the Ben Ish Chai says, there's a thing that the Ben Ish Chai says to write Haman Amalek on a paper and erase it on Purim. He says actually it's also nice if you can throw it in a cup of beer. To throw the paper in a cup of beer to erase the lettering. Why? Because we know the Sinyan of Shecha on Purim has a very special significance, and how Shichut will annul, the Shichut of Purim will annul the Klipa of Haman Amalek. The drunkenness of Purim will annul Haman Amalek. So write something and erase it, or do it. But Rabbeinu says you spiritually erase Haman Amalek by dancing and clapping. The entire Torah of lesson 10 is all within the first line. Clap and dance, b'pshitut. The problem is, we think Baruch Hashem, that Rabbeinu's words are so deep. We think he's saying so much more than he's actually saying. When Rabbi Natan says Meforash in the Hagdama of Likutei Moharan, and Rabbeinu says 1,000 times over, the main thing I'm saying is to apply my words in simplicity. The way the advice is said. And Rabbeinu told Rabbi Natan, if you can't dance because you can't lift up your feet for some reason, in your mind, picture yourself dancing. Because if you're dancing already in your mind, you're already there. Because that where you're thinking is the place in which you're in. You are where you're thinking. You are where your mind is. If you're thinking about dancing, if you're already dancing in your mind, and I picture myself dancing, I'm there. Think about it. Try it, because when you're thinking of something, you cannot think two thoughts at the same time. If you're thinking about dancing and you're dancing in your brain and you're fantasizing yourself dancing, you're dancing. Just haven't physically lifted up your feet. Rabbeinu said it's a very big thing to be able to think true rikudim. Clap your hands and dance. So we said earlier what? That the regel gava, the foot of pride, that the feet have pride. And what? That pride is avodah zarah, as we mentioned earlier. But how do you need batel avodat elim? But when you dance with your feet, you meet batel, you completely nullify avodat elim, idol worship. As it says, "V'rachatzu raglechem," you shall wash your feet. You know all the tzadikim, the avot hakedoshim. Avraham Avinu, when the angels came, he made them wash their feet. Or anytime there was a custom to make people who were coming to enter the home, to make them wash their feet. Why? Because the avodat elim is within the feet. The tumah is within the feet. The idol worship is within the feet. What does it mean to wash your feet, though? Rabbeinu said, how do you wash your feet right now? Dancing. Ze avodat elim. You shall wash your feet. This represents avodat elim. It says in the Gemara Baba Metzia. And therefore, when you elevate, I skipped many sections, but regardless, we're going to go back to section 4. When you elevate the feet through dancing, by lifting up, by the heart lifting the feet, because what really lifts up the feet is the heart. That your heart is in a jovial mood, that you're able to lift up your feet and bring your feet up galut. Nothing, the Yetzer Hara wants nothing more than to keep your feet on the ground. That's all the Yetzer Hara wants you to do. I promise you, there's such a big Yetzer Hara to set a seder every single day to dance. And by the way, the Breslever Hasidim, since the time of Rabbi Natan, Rabbi Moshe Breslever, specifically Rabbi Avraham ben Rabbi Nachman in his yeshiva, they had a seder to dance every single day. He had the seder to dance an hour every single day. An hour. We're talking about a Talmid Chacham who can put any of the Talmid Chachamim alive today to shame. Think about the biggest Talmid Chacham who knows the entire Torah Kula. This man, when I tell you Rabbi Avraham ben Rabbi Nachman had a Ruach HaKodesh in his... He used to teach, like Rabbi Avraham Sternhartz also, Rabbi Avraham Chazan, Rabbi Avraham ben Rabbi Nachman, author of Koch Ve'or Biur HaLikutim, he used to teach Likutei Moharan by heart, without a book. He used to give you word for word, letter for letter, Likutei Moharan Ba'al Peh. He didn't have a book in front of him. By the way, he also used to study Etz Chaim with Likutei Moharan back together to show how Etz Chaim, how Likutei Moharan has all the secrets of Etz Chaim.
What's Etz Chaim?
The deepest book of Kabbalah written by the Ari HaKadosh.
No way.
All the secrets of the world, and the Sfirot and Atzufim, everything. It's the hardest book to study the Ari HaKadosh by far. He used to study Etz Chaim side by side with Likutei Moharan, Tzipor Masiot. Everything Rabbeinu writes has all the secrets. Everything. When I tell you this man had the seder to dance every single day. His talmidim in his bet knesset used to dance for however long every single day. He used to dance for his talmidim used to dance for an hour a day. You know what that means to dance for an hour a day? That's how you bring the Geulah within the depression and the chaos of the world. There's so many secrets. It's funny, I was studying with another Chaver also today about the introduction to the 7 beggars. The 7 beggars, the 7 mendiants. The story of the 7 beggars, Rabbenu's famous tale, the 13th tale, the Shiva Bet, the 7 beggars. The deepest story Rabbenu ever told, where he said that if I came to the world just to tell the story, I would still be considered a total chidush. Just a story. Because to be at the madriga, to tell stories of such a tales of tzadikim, means you have to be at that level. Which means he's already the chidush that we're talking about. Rabbenu says, he starts with the story, Asaper lachem ech hayu smechim. I will tell you how people once rejoiced. I will tell you how people once were happy. And then he goes on to tell the tale of 7 beggars who have every reason to hate the world. One has a hunchback. One has a crooked neck. One is blind. One can't speak. One has no hands. One has no feet. All the problems in the world, the worst things in the world, they have every reason to hate it. And yet what? They have nothing lacking. We think the blind beggar is blind. The blind beggar said himself, I have proof from the great eagle that I see the most. Because the blind beggar sees the furthest back and yet he knows nothing. Who can tell tales of such things? And what? Have all these things. Rabbenu says, it starts off the story, I'll tell you what people want to rejoice. Meaning true simcha isn't in what you think. It's being happy with the small things. Le'at le'at, little by little. Rabbenu, there's another version. Rabbenu says, it's in Moharan. I'll tell you what people want to rejoice. They say that this is another way he said it when he started the stories. I'll tell you what people want to rejoice. From within the gloom and depression. Meaning, what's the advice Rabbenu is giving us? To find simcha when it's dark. Not to find simcha when it's easy to find simcha. To bring the simcha within the yetzirah. To bring the simcha within the klipa of Haman Amalek. When you have doubts and when you have questions, to lift yourself up and to say, I'm going to dance. Why? Because I know that dancing is going to break the klipa. Which is why Rabbenu couldn't reveal the last story of the 7th beggar, the beggar without feet. Because it has to do with all the secrets of dancing.
Why can you reveal the secrets of dancing?
It's the deepest one. Rabbenu said we were not worthy of meriting to hear the story. The Mashiach is going to come and reveal the story. That's why one of the qualities of the Mashiach, when the Mashiach comes, if you want to know if it's emet or not, ask him what the story of the 7th beggar is. He says, Mazeh, and you throw him out. Throw him out. And also one of the stories, one of the days within the story, I think the 4th day that Rabbenu didn't finish the story, he'll also know. There's many things Rabbenu left empty for the Mashiach. These are secrets that Rabbenu said. The beggar without feet, Rabbenu doesn't mention this inyan. Doesn't start the story. He starts it. Says there's a beggar without feet, but that's it. It says it's connected to the beginning of the story. And how does the beginning of the story start? A king. There was once a king. And the king had a son, prince. He was going to bring the prince to be king within the king's lifetime. He was going to make the prince the king. So you can imagine David HaMelech and King Shlomo HaMelech king while he's still alive. Can you imagine a greater honor? It's been unheard of, this thing. The king dies, he lives into the air. No. This king was going to give the kingship to his son while the king was still alive. And he tells his son, I'm going to give you the kingship. But what happens? The real king sees in the stars, in astrology, that his son is going to lose the kingship. So he tells the son, he says to him, he says like this, I see in the stars that you're going to lose your kingship. Make sure to be happy. when you lose your kingship. Because if you're not happy, then I'm happy. Why? Because I know you didn't deserve the kingship. If you are happy though when you lose the kingship, then I'll be very happy. For then I know you're a true king. Either way, the king is happy. Because in one scenario, the kingship is taken away from his son. If the son is not happy after it's taken away from him, if his crown is taken away, he's not really a king. When is a king a true king? Rabbeinu explains. When it's taken away from you, and then you pretend as if nothing happened. Which is why Rabbeinu says the secret of falling in Avodat Hashem, when you fall in Avodat Hashem, you fall into filthy places. What does Rabbeinu say? Be besimcha. Be besimcha. Contrary to the world. You have to do teshuvah, through sadness, through depression. No. Rabbeinu says, break your heart and eat bodedut. You have to be conscious of the fact that you did something wrong, right? You fell. Be conscious. But Rabbeinu says, that should only bring you to simcha. Which is why Rabbeinu says a huge etzah in Avodat Hashem to attain simcha is to break your heart for an hour. Why did he say that? Because he knows that breaking your heart actually brings you to true simcha. Which is why he says it's an indication. He explained this in Likutei Moharan, in Tinyana, lesson 25. It's an indication that what? Or 24 also. That if you had a proper hibodedut, proper brokenheartedness, it will be followed by simcha. To know whether you had a proper hibodedut is whether your hibodedut leads to simcha. So what does Rabbeinu say? Rabbeinu is not saying to not be conscious of the fact that you did something wrong, that you fall, and that you can grow up more. No, Rabbeinu is saying, yes, yearn to grow more, yearn to repair the things that you've done. But Rabbeinu says, it should never discourage you from simcha. You have the obligation to be happy. Why? Because a true king, which is the Jewish nation, the neshamot of Am Yisrael, the true kings, us Jewish people, we're gonna fall from Avodat Hashem. Rabbeinu saying, Kol ha'olam kulo gesher tzar me'od me'od. We're gonna fall. The narrow bridge, no one's staying on the narrow bridge. It's falling. It's crumbling. V'ha'ikar v'ha'klal lo leiparat klal. The main thing, not to be afraid. Not to be afraid to fall. Yes, of course, it means to have yirat shamayim, to avoid falling as much as you can. But you're gonna fall. It's part of the process. No one's perfect. You're gonna fall. The main thing though is that when you fall and when the kingship, the spiritual levels that you are at are taken away from you, meaning that your crown is taken away, then you stop being a king, then be besimcha. And to only focus on the nekudot. Yes, it means to break your heart, but after that, besimcha tamid. You should never fall into depression, God forbid. Oh, Hashem Yitbarach, I'm full of ta'avot. Oh, I want to do this thing right? I want to attain this level, but I'm so far away. I can't even perform in mitzvot. I have so many ta'avot for this or that. Rabbeinu says, serve Hashem with the little bit that you have. That's a true king. A true king is able to serve Hashem Yitbarach at the madriga that he's at the level that he's at. Not to go to the place of Chad v'Shalom thinking that you need to serve Hashem like Moshe Rabbeinu. God takes away your kingship, you're not there anymore. Serve Hashem Yitbarach where you are, standing presently, according to your capability, according to your kli. So Rab Zusha says, I'm not afraid they're going to tell me I didn't serve Hashem Yitbarach like Moshe Rabbeinu. I'm afraid they're going to tell me I didn't serve Hashem like Zusha. Because for us individuals, our obligation is to be besimcha with the little bit that we do. Doesn't mean to long for more. Yes, Rabbeinu says kisufim, the main thing is what? To yearn, to long for holiness, to long to attain Tzadikim. But that should never bring us to sadness and depression, to the fact that we think that we're not worthy with the small things that we do. What is this entire Torah? Section 2. When is Hashem's greatness the biggest? When his kavod reaches the lowest place. When we bring tefillah from the heart to the bite. When even the goyim come to recognize Hashem. Because when you feel like a goy, or when a goy feels like a goy, whenever a person feels far from Hashem, you can feel even worse than a goy sometimes. Because you're conscious, you have doubt. A Jew sometimes can get so low because he wants to attain so much, and yet he feels he's so far. So you can sink to very low place, but the Rabbeinu says, no. That's Haman Amalek. What do you have to do? Samer b'chelko. Be happy with what you have. Like Rabbi Menachem Mendel Vitebsk, very holy tzaddik, the leading Chassid, one of the leading Chassidim in the Magid Mezrich, the leading Chassid who led the pilgrimage to Eretz Yisrael, the Chassidim. He says that being happy with what you have isn't just something that we have to do at a physical level. It has to be something that we have to do with our ruchaniut too. You see the chidush Rabbeinu is teaching us? Enough whining and blaming yourself over the fact that you can't serve Hashem like a tzaddik. Yes, want to become a tzaddik. That's where you need Buddha do. You break your heart. You say, Hashem Yitbarach, I want to be a tzaddik. I break my heart. After that, basta, enough. Go to the place where you say, Hashem Yitbarach, I'm happy. I'm going to serve you. Pshitut the way I am. Pshitut the way I am. And every person knows that level that he's at. I can't keep a full Shabbat. I'm going to keep 3 hours. I'm going to put my phone away, eat my food, be simcha, be Shabbat Kodesh, and be besimcha within the 3 hours. Yes, I'm going to do it, but do it after and say Hashem Yitbarach. I want to keep ultimately 5 hours of Shabbat, etc., etc. When you're performing the mitzvah, be besimcha. There's no bigger pain for Hashem Yitbarach when you're doing a mitzvah with heaviness. Why? Because that reflects that Hashem Yitbarach is not happy with the way you're performing the mitzvah. What's the proof? Lesson 5, Likutei Moharan. That the simchato of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is within the mitzvah. The simcha of Hashem, the happiness of Hashem, is within the mitzvah. Why? Because the mitzvot and Hashem Yitbarach are be'achadut gamur. They're one, they're completely one thing. They're echad. How do you know this? Because Rabbeinu explained that the mitzvah in itself is Hashem's ratzon. Hashem wanted you to put on tefillin, and the tefillin looked like a box with a leather strap in the way that it looks. Meaning what? That God's desire is that the tefillin look the way they look like. Meaning Hashem's ratzon is in the tefillin, just like it's in the tzitzit, just like it's in the sfarim, just like it's in His Torah and mitzvah. In Shabbat Kodesh. Therefore, the mitzvah in itself is Hashem. Because the ratzon of Hashem Yitbarach is Hashem Himself. So if you are not happy in the simcha of Hashem, that means you're not be'achdut with Hashem Yitbarach. And if you're not be'achdut with Hashem Yitbarach, Hashem is not happy with you. Your simcha within the mitzvah signifies how happy Hashem is with your mitzvah. That's why it's so important. Mitzvah gdola liot besimcha tamid. Within the breaking of the heart when you you have to be besimcha. Find nekudot tovot. The main way to do this is find nekudot tovot. Lift your feet, dance, act like a fool sometimes, dance like a chicken in the mirror. I don't care what you do. Do whatever, literally do whatever you need to do as long as it doesn't go chas v'shalom against the Torah. Meaning you don't make inappropriate jokes, chas v'shalom, like Rabbeinu says. And you don't do things that are derogatory. You speak lashon hara, chas v'shalom, or do something bad against a Jew. Main thing, be a fool in the eyes of the world. Be a fool. But be besimcha. Because the world's going to think you're crazy. But that's where the true simcha comes in. It's a simcha that isn't dependent on anything. When is simcha true? When it's not dependent upon anything. My simcha isn't dependent on the fact that I'm waiting to attain Yeshua in this place, for Barasa, for a Zivug, for Emunah, this, that. No. When your simcha is dependent upon all these things, that means your simcha is at 10%, 15%, 20%, depending on how much you're lacking. But if your simcha is be'emet, true, because you're happy with what you have, that simcha is 100%, because you're missing nothing. So being truly sameach with your chelek, that is the true simcha. It's not dependent upon any single thing. That's a simcha without any conditions. And this is what Rabbeinu says. Nasa libod ragav, his heart lifted his feet. And that's how you nullify ga'ava. Hanu avodah zarah, meaning avodah zarah. You nullify arrogance through avodah zarah, through lifting your feet. And through this, judgments are sweetened. Because it said in Sifri, in Midrash and Parashat Dvarim. What did it say? As long as there's idol worship in the world, meaning there's ga'ava within you, there's divine anger in the world. Meaning what? There's dinim. If you still have ga'ava within you, there's dinim. Which is why Rabbeinu said earlier, what we talked about earlier, those people that come to prevent you from praying by the tzadikim, what are they doing? It's avodah zarah. Because they have gava. And they think they can pray. They think they don't need the tefillah of tzadikim. Be'emet, Rabbanu is saying it like this. So what does Rabbanu say? I'll
It's
continue.
like the opposite. They say it's avodah zarah to go to the kibbutz of the tzaddik.
Can you imagine? Rabbanu said it's the exact opposite. They made the mistake.
Crazy.
Emunah betzadikim, kivrei tzadikim is the only way to have true emunah in Hashem Yitbarach without avodah zarah.
Because they think they're worthy of not.
Exactly.
Yeah, I got you.
You don't need tzadikim. You can connect to Hashem Yitbarach on your own. There's no bigger ga'ava in the world than this. There's no bigger ga'ava. You know why? Because it disguises itself behind a beard or behind a hat. I'm telling you. There's no bigger ga'ava in the world. There's no bigger danger. When the emet, by the way, there's no there's no bigger emet in the world. There's no bigger sheker in the world when there's a lot of emet and there's a little sheker. Because you think everything else is emet.
Oh man.
Repeat that.
There's no bigger sheker in the world when it's hiding behind a lot of emet. Meaning, perhaps a person who leads a lot of people, mekarev a lot of people, or a rab with a hat and a beard who leads a community, who prevents people from going to kivrei tzadikim, prevents people from going to Uman Chad V'Shalom, or going to Meron, to do a tiyul, to go pray by the kivrei tzadikim. There's no bigger ga'ava in this world, and no bigger sheker, because we know sheker when we see it. For a person who's in the Torah, a person who's not in the Torah, you know it's sheker. It's easy to see that. But when does it become tough to see sheker and emet, to distinguish between the two? When it's hiding behind a tremendous amount of nice clothing, tie, dresses like a shiva bachar. You can see that I'm sheker right now because I have ta'avot for clothing. I dress the way I do. I like this. I like that. I like watch this, that. You know. You can see that there's sheker. It's clear.
Is everybody supposed to attach to the same tzaddik though? I thought there was an idea that like certain people spiritually are attached to certain tzaddikim that they find.
Of course.
So if those people aren't going to Uman, for example, is that
No, it's
right
fine.
for them, or is everybody supposed to attach to this tzaddik?
We're not going to judge and Chad V'Shalom say that.
No, right.
Be'emet lamito, emet lamito. You want to get to the highest kavana? The tzaddik ha'emet has the remedies for every individual. For sure.
Rabbi Nachman says no one should be missing Hashem. So whatever you interpret that to mean.
Yeah.
Even the biggest, by the way, from the biggest tzaddik, today's generation, you can find the biggest tzaddik chacham. Mention him. I don't care what his name is. He's missing something, a nekuda that he can attain if he's done it. Umar for Rosh Hashanah.
I thought in 282 there was something about like at the end of it when it talks about the children reading from the book.
Exact. So that's exactly what I was going to say.
There's different shepherds.
100%. There's different shepherds.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
So what did Rabbeinu say in lesson 70? The answer to the question. There's different tzaddikim that are branches off a tree. Some branches have many leaves. Who are the leaves? The talmidim.
And he's the root.
Exactly. The tzaddik ha'emet is the root of the tree. Meaning all the branches stem off the root. So Rabbeinu says, there's a level, Rabbeinu says, yes, connect yourself to a tzaddik. Connect yourself to tzaddik. Does it need to be me? No. Connect yourself to tzaddik.
But no.
But, you want to get to the emet lamito? It's only with one person. Tzaddik Yesodah. Everyone else has their emet. Shivim panim Torah. But the emet lamito, and by the way, when there's the emet lamito in the world, the only way to really, Rabbeinu says, be'emet lamito, to draw close to Hashem Yitbarach, he says this in Moharan, is once the tzaddik emet comes to the world, it's impossible to draw close to Hashem without it. Moharan, I read this.
It's impossible to do what?
Draw close to Hashem Yitbarach without the tzaddik emet. Once he comes to the world. Rabbeinu says before the Baal Shem Tov came, before the Ari HaKadosh, those generations didn't need to draw close to Hashem tzaddikim, so they each had their own avodat Hashem. The second that tzaddik came to the world, the Ari HaKadosh, the psak is that he is the Raya Mehemna, he's the faithful shepherd of the generation. Now, are there plenty of other tzaddikim? Absolutely. The tzaddikim amitim, Rabbeinu speaks about the holiness of the tzaddikim. Now, of course, there's plenty of false leaders also. That's each and every person does that beror on his own. He prays to Hashem. Hashem, help me avoid the false leaders. Help me draw close to the tzaddikim amitim. Every person has to pray for this. Rabbi Israel was a master knowing this. It says in Sefer Amidot, Rabbeinu explained, one who speaks truth knows the difference between when he hears sheker and emet. I'll tell you one thing about Rabbi Chassid, Rabbi Israel, not one dibur was sheker, not one. Not one. That's a special thing. That's a niche to Rabbi Israel. Only emet. By the way, his stories. You hear the stories? Only emet. Only emet. No ga'ava. Only emet. Mekubal came to him once, and I'll explain the connection with regard to the tzaddik emet and the branches and stuff. Mekubal came to Rabbi Israel once, or it wasn't a Mekubal, it was a Rosh Yeshiva. Came to Rabbi Israel, heard about Rabbi Israel. Came to him with his shamash. He walks in the room, you know the story. Rabbi Israel goes like this. Ma reach hazeh. What's the smell? What's the smell? The Rosh Yeshiva is like, what? Rabbi Israel shamash around party, like, Rabbi Israel, take it easy, relax, relax. Rabbi Israel says, Ma reach hazeh.
Oh man.
What's the smell? What's this odor? The Rosh Yeshiva says, this is your Rebbe. Walks out. 2 weeks later, comes back to Rabbi Israel. Rabbi Israel didn't say anything. You know what the Rosh Yeshiva said? He said, I understood why. I used to prevent the Bachurei Yeshiva from going to the mikveh. Because I thought it was bitul Torah. Until I came to that. Because I thought about what Rabbi Israel said. Until I came to the understanding that the reason why he smells me bad is because I don't let the Bachurei Yeshiva smell good through going to the mikveh. Meaning my neshama is giving off a bad fragrance. He made it upset that the Bachurei Yeshiva can go to the mikveh. Only in night, Rabbi Israel. Rabbi Israel one time was at Kiddush, Friday night. He was invited to do he did Mesadat Kiddushin for one of the people, a person was getting married. Kiddush Friday night, they gave him the kavod. Rabbi Israel, trust me, he knew Likutei Moharan, like this. Rabbi Israel had finished 1,000 times, I think, Likutei Moharan by the age of 30 or something like that, a wild number. I don't even remember the number, but it was hundreds of times. He writes it in Tzaddik Israel. Rabbi Israel brings the shamash. How does it start? How does Kiddush start? Yom. He says Yom. Hashishi. Like this. Until he finishes the Kiddush, repeating every word. Why? So he doesn't have to take kavod. No gava. Everything, the main thing, always draw close to truth. Now, there's madregot of emet. Rabbi says in lesson 9, lesson 112. There's madregot of emet. But there's only one emet lamito. Saying there's one emet, right? You cannot say that this table is a chair. The table is a table. There's nothing else. This book is a book. It's not a phone. It's not a water bottle. It's this and that. Emet, right? But the tzaddik emet knows the emet lamito. And that is, even if you fall away from the emet, the shirin panim laTorah, you still have a way back through something much bigger, which is the bechina of teshuvah, which comes from the Rav Chesed, the bechina of Purim, Mordechai, all this stuff. That only one tzaddik has the capability of doing. That's Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu, like the Zohar Kadosh says, there is not a tzaddik that guarded a generation as a shield like Moshe. For Moshe is Chaya Me'emna. Moshe is the faithful shepherd. There's levels of tzaddikim. People don't like to speak about it. It's a fundamental in Rabbeinu's Torah because he's saying in lesson 30, don't fall under the misconception that it's enough to draw to someone close. No. Draw close to the biggest tzaddik there is. The one with the biggest wisdom, but the biggest tzaddik. The one who's rid from the most ta'avot. The one who's the biggest tzaddik, who has the biggest koach. Why? Because the more he can repair, the lower he can go. If Hashem Yitbarach's greatness is in the fact that he lowers himself to the lowest place, to bring himself the fact that he can stay with the low person. You good? By the way, it's a good siman sneezing. It's a good siman. Shulchan Aruch, it says it's very good that when a person sneezes in tefillah, it's a very good siman bracha.
No way.
Sneeze in tefillah.
Sneeze in tefillah?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a vibe.
Good things. Rabbeinu says though, the sicker the person, what do you need? The biggest doctor. And people don't like to speak about it because I understand it's a sensitive topic. You're speaking about who's a bigger tzaddik, this, that, and a lot of people, obviously, there's certain blockages a lot of the times. Okay, this man, he hears something, Rabbeinu, it didn't turn him on. Something Rabbeinu says, this and that. But Rabbi Nathan says, anyone wants to pick a hole with the arguments that Rabbeinu brings and stuff like that, will never find the true Rabbeinu. Will never find a tzaddik. The only way to find the true tzaddik is if you lower yourself and you search for the truth. And you never stop searching. So, like what Rabbi Nathan said in Chod Shabbat, if you don't know when Shabbat is, you're traveling in the desert, Chaz v'shalom, you forgot, you don't know time. What do?
You count 7 days.
Yeah, which means what? You make Shabbat right now. And from that point, what do?
New friendship.
Exactly. So, if you're living in the desert, you have to do menachot to be able to survive, right? You have nothing. So, he says, what's the difference? Shabbat or Chol, you're going to still be doing menachot to survive. On Shabbat, you're going to still need to do the menachot just enough to survive, right? You're going to still need to break Shabbat just enough to be able to survive, right? During the week too, you're also not supposed to do more than that, because what? It might be the actual day of Shabbat. The Tuesday might actually be the day of Shabbat. The Wednesday might actually be the day of Shabbat. You can't go out of your way to break a melacha on that Tuesday or Wednesday that you made your Tuesday or Wednesday, because that day might actually be the Shabbat Kodesh. So what does it say? What does Rabbi Nathan bring down the Inyan? What's the difference between the Shabbat and the Chol? There is no difference technically, because you're only supposed to do the same amount on either day. So he says, Havdalah. The fact that you separated something. What does Rabbi Nathan say? What is Shabbat? Tzaddik Amen. Antu Shabbat dechu leyome. It's brought down in Idra Rabbah Parashat. I think it's Parashat Naso. Zohar Parashat Naso. That the Chavrayat Rabbi Shimon, you are the Shabbat of all the days. Meaning what? They distinguished the tzaddik of the generation, and they said he's the Shabbat Kodesh. Rabbi Shimon is the Shabbat. I can't even tell you how many times I've been reading through the Zohar Kadosh, where they say, Vaile Dara Kadistalka Rabbi Shimon. Woe to the generation Kadistalka Rabbi Shimon when Rabbi Shimon passes away. Woe to the generation when Rabbi Shimon passes away. Rabbi Yehuda Parashat Yitro. A crazy Zohar. Crazy Zohar. What did he say? Kiu chayecha ve'orech yamecha, right? The Torah is, chayecha, your life, ve'orech yamecha, and the length of your days. What does he say over there? Torah is your life and the length of your days, meaning terech chaye. Chaye in this world, two types of. What did it say? Chayecha, your lives. Why plural? Two lives, this world and the world to come. But what does Rabbi Yehuda say? ורבי שמעון, כל מי דהתפרש מרבי שמעון כאילו דהתפרש מקולה. כל מי דהתפרש מרבי שמעון כאילו דהתפרש מקולה. Anyone who separates himself from Rabbi Shimon, he separated himself from everything. Meaning what? Even more than Torah. If you separate yourself from Rabbi Shimon, not only do you separate yourself from this world and the next, you separate yourself from the Torah and from the Tzaddik. Which is why Rabbeinu says in Likutei Moharan that the tzaddik is above the Torah. Because the tzaddik brings you the Torah to your level. The Torah, you don't have the capability to bring the Torah there where you are standing, within your problem, within your tavot. But what does Rabbeinu do? He tells you, when a person asks, where is your God? In the great city of Rome, meaning in the place of your klipa. You think Hashem isn't in your place. Rabbeinu, the Tzaddik Ahmed, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the great Tzaddikim, they're going to teach you that what? No, Hashem is within Rome, the place of Avodah Zarah, Gilui Arayot, Shvichut Damim, all that place. And not only that, even in your place, when you're kofer and Hashem is with you. There's still a piece of Hashem within you. And only the Tzaddik Ahmed knows how to do this. To bring it to the lowest person. Which is why it says what? To bring tefillah to the Har Sadeh Bayit. Only the tzaddikim Shabbat know this. Because what's tefillah supposed to be? The thing that connects to every individual from the highest to the lowest. But who's at the lowest place? The biggest tzaddik. Because only he can sacrifice himself to descend that low. Which is why Rabbi Nathan says, search for the true tzaddik, because bringing the true tzaddik into your problems, that's whenever you start to find the solutions. Bring Rabbeinu into your problems. Apply the etzot of Rabbeinu within your problem. Dance within your problem. When Rabbeinu says clap and dance within your problem. Even with all your averot, with all the sins that you've done, this and that, clap and dance. Do it for 2 minutes, because you're going to apply the advice of Rabbeinu within your problem. You know, talking to a good friend of mine, and he was saying, you know, I do an hour read Bodhidut, but some days I do not read Bodhidut at all. And he says, so I said, you're right, you feel an hour. So you don't want to, I said, what did I tell him? You have a gava in the sense that you do not want to do 2 minutes of Bodhidut today. Why? Because you've done an hour.
True.
You've tasted an hour, so you don't want to lower yourself to 2 minutes. So you'd rather not do it at all to convince yourself that you're still at the hour. What does Rabbeinu say? Serve Hashem. Pshitut at your level. It's a ga'ava to think that Hashem is not with you at your low place. It's kfirah. Bring Hashem Yibach within your 2 minutes of Bodhidut. Do you know why? Because you're going to show Hashem, my kingship was taken away from me, my crown, but I'm still going to be sameach. And do the 2 minutes of Bodhidut besimcha. And that requires a tremendous amount of humility, more than not doing the Bodhidut. Because what? You really recognize that Hashem is going to take simcha from the small things that I do. And that you're not at the level that you think you are. But when you act like that, Hashem gives you a much bigger treasure. Not only will He give you an hour, He'll give you 2 hours, He'll give you 3 hours, He'll give you 5 hours. When you really are besimcha with the small things. But to be able to be besimcha with the small thing goes back to what we were talking about. There's many tzadikim and many branches with leaves on those branches. But to think that the true tzaddik doesn't have a connection to even the furthest person or that person because he feels connected somewhere else, it's not necessarily true at all. Because the true tzaddik has the advice for every soul. Mikaton v'ad gadol, from the lowest to the highest. And if you think the true tzaddik doesn't have the advice for that, it's a lack of emunat chachamim. Lack of emunah in Hashem. So, you're right. What were we talking about? What's the difference between Shabbat Kodesh? The difference between Shabbat and Chol if you're in the desert? Havdalah. Separation. Meaning what? You're going to separate for yourself a tzaddik. You don't know when Shabbat is, meaning you don't know who the tzaddik ha'emet is. You don't know who the Rabbi Shimon and the Rabbi Nachman generation is, right? A person can, by the way, a person can be listening to this. We can be saying that Rabbeinu is a tzaddik ha'emet. Literally saying it explicitly. And he doesn't think so. Meaning what? He doesn't know where the true tzaddik is, right? But make for yourself a tzaddik. Make for yourself a Shabbat Kodesh. Make for yourself a tzaddik. And apply his advice. But what did he say? When you find out when the real Shabbat is, that's when you keep the real Shabbat. When you find out who the true tzaddik is, the tzaddik emet, that's when you make him your tzaddik. Because don't forget that your Shabbat is not the real day of Shabbat until you find out when the real day of Shabbat is, when you get out of the desert. But you have to search, and you have to search, and search. For the searching is the main thing. The finding will come. Rabbeinu says, when you search, you find. Anybody who says he toiled but he did not find, do not believe him. Anybody who says who didn't toil but he found, do not believe him either. Anybody who says, Yagati umatzati tamino, I toiled and I found something, believe him. Because everything goes after the searching. Everything. But derech sipati maaseh, the entire story of our life is within the derech. It's not on whether we find the princess or not. The princess will be found, whether we search. Where did we? That's where we left off.
Why Abdallah and not like the beginning of Shabbat?
Huh?
Why Abdallah and not the beginning of Shabbat? To separate from Chol to Kodesh. Because we could say like also in the beginning of Shabbat, we say okay, we turn from like a normal day to a holiday, or I don't know.
You're saying Havdalah when you do on a cup of wine and stuff like that?
Yeah, just like the change between like a normal day to
To the Shabbat.
yeah.
Why is the Havdalah that separation and not like the beginning of Shabbat Kodesh?
Yeah.
The truth is we do separate from the beginning of Shabbat Kodesh because we're stopping to do melachot that we obviously were allowed to do since the beginning. The separation comes though when you're in it and you have to be pushed away from it.
You go back.
You have to go back to reality. Now, when Rabbi Natan says Havdalah is the only separation between when a person doesn't know Shabbat is, meaning when he's going to make himself a Shabbat starting right now, and then the rest of the week he's still going to be doing the same thing. It's still going to be like, you know what I mean? He still has to Shabbat. You still have to break melachot even on Shabbat and during the week. He's going to be doing the same exact thing, but Havdalah meaning. It's Havdalah, meaning the separation in itself, the fact that he said, I'm going to choose for myself a Shabbat. Havdalah means separation, meaning I'm going to make a Havdalah. I'm going to make a separation between Shabbat and Chol, even though I'm going to be doing the same thing and make a separation. But once you find out what the real Shabbat is, that's when you have the obligation to draw close to the true Tzaddik. What did we say? Is that a good place to stop? Yeah, I think so. I don't know. Yeah. I think it's a good place to stop. We'll stop here. Ki yesh ba'alei gava. I'd like to go more, but I mean, it's long also. Yeah. That's where we stop right here. Ki yesh ba'alei gava. Ezrat Hashem. Shenizke be happy and dance and clap on Purim. This is the main thing. Get rid of our gava. Get rid of our avodah zarah within us. Get rid of all our doubts, our amalek within us. Main thing is to be the simcha on Purim. To drink just enough to only dance all day. Really, Bezrat Hashem. Merci, frère. Toda rabba.